When Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett stepped onto the stage of The View, she didn't just walk into a morning talk show. She walked into a world that had long since blurred the lines between entertainment, politics, and media. Her appearance was more than an interview, it was a reckoning. In a space where polished soundbites and carefully curated dialogue are the norm, Jasmine brought something raw, unfiltered, and deeply uncomfortable for those in power. What began as a routine conversation about political division and media narratives quickly spiraled into a confrontation that exposed the fragility of media respectability, the double standards embedded in public discourse, and the growing demand for authenticity in a time when truth is often sacrificed for comfort. This story isn't just about a viral moment or a dramatic TV segment. It's about the intersection of media influence, political representation, and the courage it takes to speak truth in a system designed to control it. Jasmine Crockett didn't come to perform. She came to challenge. And in doing so, she disrupted not only the expectations of a daytime audience but also the unspoken rules of how televised debate should be conducted. Jasmine Crockett is no stranger to breaking molds. As a member of the U.S. House of Representatives from Texas' 7th District, she has consistently carved out a unique space for herself in a political landscape often dominated by loud voices and scripted rhetoric. Known for her calm demeanor, sharp intellect, and unflinching honesty, Jasmine is the kind of leader who doesn't need theatrics to make a point. Her style is deliberate, grounded, and rooted in principle, qualities that made her presence on The View both unexpected and powerful. But before the cameras rolled and the microphones were turned on, there was a decision being made in the producer's room. When ABC reached out to Jasmine's office with an invitation to appear on the show, many expected a polite decline. Politicians rarely accept offers from daytime television shows, especially ones like The View, which straddles the line between news commentary and celebrity gossip. But Jasmine said yes, and not just any yes. She agreed without pre-screened questions, without talking points, and without a handler whispering in her ear. That alone sent ripples through the production team. Inside the green room, Jasmine arrived at 9 a.m., dressed in a cobalt blue blazer, black heels, and a sleek leather briefcase. No entourage. No fuss. Just a woman ready to speak her mind. While junior producers offered tea, she declined with a smile and pulled out her tablet to review notes. Through the walls, she could hear the familiar rhythm of the show, canned applause, theme music, and Joy Behar cracking a joke. But Jasmine wasn't there to follow the script. She was there to disrupt it. When the stagehand signaled 5 minutes until airtime, Jasmine stood up, adjusted her collar, and exhaled slowly. This wasn't just another appearance. This was a mission. Back on set, the panel, Alyssa Farah Griffin, Sunny Hostin, and Joy Behar, greeted Jasmine with smiles, though the tension in the air was palpable. The audience cheered as Jasmine walked out with quiet confidence, no fanfare, no phony wave. From the moment she sat down beside Alyssa and Sunny, it was clear this wouldn't be your average morning chatter. Jasmine thanked them politely when Sunny complimented her shoes, but she wasn't interested in small talk. Whoopi Goldberg, ever the consummate host, leaned in and said, "Congresswoman, thank you for being here." Jasmine met her eyes and replied, "Thank you for having me." There was a 2-second silence that felt anything but accidental. Then Whoopi continued, framing the conversation around division, truth, and media narratives. The question was straightforward: how do we bridge gaps when everyone thinks they already know the whole story? Jasmine smiled, not the kind of smile you give to smooth things over, but the kind that says, "I'm ready." She folded her hands on the table and said, "Maybe we start by admitting that not everyone is telling the whole story, especially not when the cameras are rolling." That sentence alone shifted the dynamic. The panel reacted subtly. Alyssa let out a short breath, Sunny raised her eyebrows, and Joy tilted her head slightly. Jasmine didn't flinch. She wasn't there to play along. She was there to call out what was wrong. As the conversation unfolded, Jasmine's words grew bolder. When Sunny tried to lighten the mood, Jasmine leaned in and said, "Stirring the pot isn't the problem. Lying about what's in it is." The pause that followed was longer than the first one. Joy looked down at her notes. Whoopi pursed her lips. The conversation hadn't even hit its second question, but it was already off script. Jasmine didn't come to follow a script. What happened next would ensure that no one in that studio forgot her name. At first, the tension wasn't obvious. To viewers at home, it might have seemed like a spirited exchange, something you'd see any weekday morning before the next cooking segment or sponsored giveaway. But inside the Burbank studio, the shift was undeniable. Jasmine wasn't just speaking truth, she was holding up a mirror to the media industry itself. When Whoopi asked if Jasmine thought the public was tired of headlines and outrage, Jasmine responded with surgical precision, "They're tired of being told what's important and what's not based on whether it fits someone's brand." The audience went quiet. Some clapped hesitantly, unsure if they were supposed to be clapping yet. Whoopi sat back in her chair, arms crossed, and asked, "Okay, so let's be real then. What exactly are you calling out right now?" Jasmine leaned forward and said, "I'm calling out how media, left, right, doesn't matter, picks its outrage based on what's safe. And when people like me bring up the uncomfortable parts, suddenly we're divisive. But it's only divisive because some folks aren't used to being questioned." You could almost hear someone cough in the control room. The camera angle shifted to catch the full panel, an old production trick when things start heating up. That way, nobody gets to hide behind a reaction. Joy asked, "Are you referring to something specific?" "We've said on this show, not just this show," Jasmine cut in, "Sure. A few weeks ago, y'all spent 15 minutes dissecting a senator's outfit like it was policy. The same day, a black teenager was shot walking home from school. You gave the fashion drama more airtime." Joy opened her mouth, paused, and knew it was true. The conversation continued to escalate. Whoopi, trying to regain control, said, "Look, Congresswoman, we don't control what stories go viral. That's not all on us." Jasmine responded calmly but firmly, "I'm not asking you to control what goes viral. I'm asking you not to feed it when it's convenient and then act neutral when real issues hit the table." There was silence, not the kind of silence where someone is pausing for effect, but the kind that feels human, honest, and heavy. The studio audience had gone still. Some people had their arms folded. Others stared wide-eyed. A few, especially younger guests in the back, looked quietly thrilled. They weren't used to seeing anyone challenge the view like this. Alyssa broke the tension, asking Jasmine what the solution was. Jasmine sat back for a second, not smiling, not gloating. She simply said, "Start inviting people who don't need media training to say what they mean. Stop filtering everything through a script. And most importantly, don't bring on truth tellers just to make yourself look balanced, then panic when they actually tell the truth." That line hit hard. Whoopi's eyes narrowed. She didn't appreciate being called out, not on her stage, not in front of America, not by someone who wasn't playing by the unspoken rules of TV politics. Before she could push back, the control booth signaled the next segment. A producer's voice whispered through the earpieces, "We still have a commercial coming up. Need to finish the next minute clean." Whoopi looked off camera briefly, then turned back. "All right," she said, "we're gonna take a short break." But Jasmine cut in. "Let me finish this one thing." The audience gasped, not from shock at her tone, but from surprise that someone would dare defy the script. Jasmine wasn't there to play guest. She was there to tell the truth. And she wasn't finished yet. #### the unraveling, when the format fails the message. There's a certain rhythm to daytime talk shows: questions, answers, light jabs, polite laughs, move along. That rhythm was gone the moment Jasmine Crockett told Whoopi she wasn't done. The set felt off balance, like the stage itself had tilted slightly, not in chaos, not yet, but something had shifted. You could see it in the way Joy reached for her coffee mug like a reflex, and in how Sunny started to cross and uncross her legs, glancing toward the producer's booth for cues that never came. Jasmine's voice remained steady. "I'll keep it brief," she said. "I think we've reached a place where people confuse discomfort with disrespect. And I'm not going to apologize for making anyone uncomfortable if the facts I'm sharing are real." Whoopi exhaled. "No one's asking you to apologize. We're trying to have a conversation here. And you're responding. Jasmine didn't hesitate. You asked how we bridge the gap. This is how. We stop pretending all perspectives are equal when some are rooted in truth and others in self-preservation. Joy put her mug down. That's a slippery slope, though. Who decides what's true? Jasmine cut her off gently but firmly. If your truth changes depending on who's affected, it was never the truth to begin with. That line hit harder than any insult could have. It wasn't disrespectful, but it was surgical. Sunny let out a low wow under her breath, not loud, but audible. The control booth was silent. No one dared push the next segment button. This wasn't daytime television anymore. It was raw, unpredictable, and far too real for comfort. What followed was not just a bad segment or a tense exchange. It was something deeper, rawer, and unrehearsed. Whoopi tried to bring things back one last time, forcing a slight smile. Let's talk solutions, she said. You say the media is not being honest. You say platforms like this one have a responsibility. Okay. What would that look like in practice? Jasmine didn't even blink. Letting people speak without managing them. Whoopi stiffened. I'm not managing you. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. You're managing the reaction, not the message. There's a difference. That line hit harder than any insult could have. It wasn't disrespectful, but it was surgical. Alyssa tried again. Look, I think what you're saying is valuable. But at the same time, this show has a format. We're here to talk with you, not be talked at. Jasmine turned to her. Respectfully, Sunny. Talking at people is what media does every day. What I'm doing is talking to you. That it feels different says more about how rare this kind of conversation is. Whoopi's voice dropped. That's enough. Jasmine looked at her. Is it? There was a long pause. The audience sensed something dangerous in the air and had stopped clapping altogether. Phones were recording now, discreetly from the back rows. One clip would eventually hit 15 million views by nightfall. Whoopi leaned forward again, and this time, the strain was showing. You want to make a point? Fine. You made it. But don't come on the show, on my stage, and act like you're the only one speaking truth. We've been doing this for over 20 years. Don't lecture us like we've never had a real conversation before. Jasmine didn't blink. Then maybe ask yourself why none of those conversations stuck. The room exploded, gasps, murmurs, a few people clapped before stopping themselves. Whoopi stood up again, this time her voice wasn't steady. Oh hell no, she muttered. She turned to the camera crew. We're done. Cut. Cut it now. But they didn't cut. There was no commercial this time. Someone in the booth hesitated, frozen. The delay was only 5 or 6 seconds, but it was long enough for millions of viewers to see Whoopi slam her cue cards down, throw her mic pack onto the table, and storm off. The audience was stunned. Joy leaned back, clearly shaken. Alyssa looked like she had just stepped into a job interview with no prep. Sunny covered her mouth with one hand, trying to hold back whatever she was feeling, shock, maybe, admiration, maybe both. Jasmine still hadn't moved. One leg crossed over the other, hands calm in her lap. A producer finally blacked out the feed and threw the show to a blank slate. Then came the emergency fill-in segment, a pre-recorded fashion piece with zero relevance to what had just happened. But by then, Twitter was already exploding. YouTube channels were cutting clips from phone recordings. Inside the studio, headlines were popping up on every feed. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett shuts down The View, Whoopi walks off Live, daytime TV just got real and it's messy. In less than 15 minutes, the incident had gone from awkward to viral. And nobody, not the producers, not ABC, not even Jasmine's own team, had seen it coming. Outside the studio, Jasmine's team was waiting by the car. A young assistant looked panicked. Congresswoman, we didn't mean for it to get that heated. Jasmine opened the door herself. You think it was heated? That was mild. She slid into the back seat, closed the door, and stared out the window as the car pulled off. She didn't speak for a while, just watched as the studio shrank behind her. But while she left the building, her words stayed, and they were only getting louder by the hour. Within an hour, ABC's executive offices in Los Angeles and New Jersey were on back-to-back calls. Emails with subject lines like urgent, Crockett segment fallout, and PR response needed now were flying across inboxes. Everyone from legal to marketing had their hands on it. The footage hadn't even been officially posted yet, but bootleg clips from the studio audience were everywhere: Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, even WhatsApp. It wasn't just going viral. It was snowballing. Because this wasn't a planned TV outburst. It was an unscripted confrontation that had cracked something people were already suspicious of: the polished surface of media respectability. Backstage at The View, the mood was tense and strangely quiet. Producers were gathered around monitors, replaying the exchange again and again. One of them, a guy named Max who had been with the show for almost a decade, muttered, "We can't air this version tomorrow." Not the full clip. Too late, his colleague snapped. The internet already did it for us. Meanwhile, Whoopi was in her dressing room, pacing. Someone had brought her tea, but she hadn't touched it. Her assistant hovered nearby, unsure whether to say anything or just stay quiet and out of the way. "This was a setup," Whoopi finally said, shaking her head. She knew exactly what she was doing the minute she walked in here. She came here to make a scene, not a statement. The assistant hesitated. It didn't seem like she was trying to perform. Whoopi turned to her sharply. That's what made it worse. On the other end of the building, in a quiet hallway near the freight elevator, Jasmine Crockett stood with her aide Marlon. He had been watching the social media storm grow on his phone in real time. He looked up, wide-eyed. It's everywhere. Clips from 5 different angles. They're already editing side-by-sides with old Whoopi clips and calling it the Jasmine moment. Jasmine didn't look at his phone. She was still processing. She wasn't shaken, but she wasn't celebrating either. For her, this wasn't about the clips. It wasn't about getting famous. It was about the room, about what had happened in that studio when the stage stopped working like it was supposed to. "I didn't expect her to walk off," Jasmine finally said. Marlon replied, "You hit something raw." She didn't want truth. She wanted a guest who would color inside the lines. They stood there for a moment, neither speaking. Then Marlon's phone buzzed again. "The governor of Missouri just retweeted a clip and called you a national disruptor." He meant it as an insult, but it's catching on. Jasmine gave a slight laugh. "Of course it is." Back upstairs, producers were meeting in a small conference room with the head of talent and ABC's crisis PR lead. "We need a statement by the end of the day," the lead producer said. "And it better not be the usual soft one." Another chimed in, "If we go too hard on her, it'll look like we're suppressing the conversation." Someone from the back suggested, "Maybe we admit that things got uncomfortable and that's what made it honest." Silence. No one said it, but everyone knew the truth: the show had been getting stale. Ratings had plateaued. Viewers were tired of the same safe debates in different outfits. And whether they liked it or not, Jasmine Crockett had just given them the most real segment they'd aired in years. Later that afternoon, as the storm kept growing, Joy Behar called Sonny. "Did you talk to Whoopi?" "No," Sonny said. "She's pissed. She thinks Jasmine hijacked the show." "Did she?" There was a pause on the line. "I don't think so," Sonny finally replied. "I think she just refused to lie politely." But the question now wasn't whether Jasmine Crockett had made her point. It was whether the network could survive it without changing everything. By nightfall, the story had spread well beyond political circles or daytime TV fans. Jasmine Crockett's name was trending across platforms. It wasn't just one viral clip, there were dozens, each showing a different angle, each edited with different subtitles, captions, and remixes. One clip posted by a college student from Austin had already hit 4.6 million views. It was the moment Jasmine leaned in and said, "I didn't agree to a performance." The student had captioned it, "Say it louder for the people in the back." Another clip, grainy and filmed from the studio audience, caught Whoopi walking off and throwing her mic down. That one was being used by every reaction channel online. Some were defending her, others not so much. Across social media, the reactions split into two camps. Some praised Jasmine as fearless, finally someone with backbone. One post read, "She said what millions of us think every time the media sugarcoats real issues." Others called her disrespectful, too aggressive, or accused her of hijacking a show meant for a light-hearted debate. But even critics couldn't deny one thing: people were listening. The comments section on the View's official page turned into a war zone. Longtime fans demanded the show address what happened. Newcomers, many of whom had never watched the program before, flooded the feed with fire emojis, quotes from Jasmine, and questions like, "Why haven't y'all aired the full clip yet?" YouTubers released breakdowns within hours, with titles like "Jasmine Crockett vs. The View," "What Really Happened," "Truth Bomb or TV Meltdown," and "When Daytime TV Got a Reality Check." Cable news picked it up too. Late-night anchors made jokes about it. Conservative pundits used the moment to criticize liberal media's cracks in the facade. Progressive outlets awkwardly tried to both celebrate and downplay the moment. But the real moment came when Jasmine posted on her personal X, formerly Twitter, account around 11 p.m. It was short, just one sentence. "I told the truth. They just weren't ready to hear it." That single post got over 120,000 likes within 2 hours. Journalists started reaching out immediately. People wanted interviews, statements, explanations. But Jasmine didn't respond. She wasn't interested in explaining herself to networks that had spent years asking for sound bites but not solutions. Meanwhile, a hashtag began to trend, #TheJasmineMoment. What started as a backlash became a rallying cry. High school students in Kansas were quoting her during classroom discussions. A group of young organizers in Oakland turned her line about truth not coming with a smile into a banner for their community center. Even people who had no clue who Jasmine Crockett was before breakfast were now calling her the most honest voice to hit TV in a decade. At the same time, ABC was scrambling. They released a short, vague statement. Today's broadcast included a spirited discussion that touched on sensitive issues. While we stand by our commitment to diverse voices, we recognize the importance of respectful dialogue. We are reviewing how the segment was handled and will be adjusting accordingly. That statement backfired almost immediately. One tweet mocked it, "Reviewing how it was handled? Y'all mean reviewing how someone told the truth on live TV?" The memes got meaner. Screenshots of Joy sipping from her coffee mug mid-drama, Sunny looking stunned, Alyssa biting her lip, all turned into viral images with sarcastic captions. Even celebrities chimed in. A well-known R&B singer reposted Jasmine's clip with the caption, "Say what you want." She ate it. It was chaos, organized chaos. The kind Jasmine had expected, but didn't feed. Instead, she stayed offline. In a small restaurant in South Dallas, she had dinner with her mother. No press. No phones on the table. Just two women sitting quietly while the world outside buzzed with noise. Her mom looked at her and smiled. "You always were a little too honest for people's comfort." Jasmine smirked. "And they always mistook that for being angry." Her mom nodded. "Let them." But the storm hadn't passed yet. And tomorrow morning, the world would be watching to see what The View would say, or whether they'd say anything at all. The next morning, The View went live again. But something felt different. There was no bright piano music. No cheery pan across the audience. The set was the same, but the energy was off, more guarded, less playful. Joy opened the show, not Whoopi. "Good morning," she said, voice flat but measured. "We're here today after what some of you might call a very eventful episode yesterday." No one laughed. Alyssa looked uncomfortable. Sunny was composed but quiet. And Whoopi? Absent. Joy continued, We've had a lot of reactions from viewers from across the country about yesterday's conversation with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Some of it was supportive. Some of it was critical. All of it loud. There was a pause. Then she added, "We want to say that this show has always been about strong women, strong opinions, and passionate debate. Sometimes it gets messy. Sometimes it gets uncomfortable. But that's part of the job." Still, something was missing. They weren't saying her name, not Whoopi, not Crockett. Just vague references, like they were trying to smooth the edges of a moment that had already cut too deep. Sunny finally broke the rhythm. "I think people needed to hear what she said. And maybe we weren't all ready for it. But it hit something that needed to be hit." Joy gave her a look that said, "Careful." The audience applauded softly but clearly. Alyssa nodded. "It's okay for conversations to feel tough. What matters is that we keep having them." That was it. No direct apology. No statement of regret. No accountability either. And no Whoopi. Insiders later revealed she had refused to come on that morning. Said she needed space and wasn't ready to play nice for the cameras. A few speculated it was deeper than that, embarrassment, maybe, or the realization that the control she thought she had on set could vanish with one guest who didn't care about the format. Meanwhile, producers were having a very different kind of morning. Ratings from the previous episode had come in highest in 2 years, not just live views, streaming replays, clips on socials. The entire brand had been rebooted overnight, not by design, but by disruption. One junior producer emailed the team, "Love her or hate her, Crockett got people watching again." In a separate Zoom call, ABC executives discussed a bigger question: what next? Do we invite her back? One VP asked. The room went quiet. "Are you serious? Another shot back? Invite her back after she dismantled us live?" "Not the show," someone else corrected. "And now everyone's talking about us." That was the crux of it. The show hadn't been destroyed. If anything, it had been cracked open. And people couldn't stop looking inside. Jasmine, for her part, remained silent. No interviews. No statements. No morning after tour. She let the world spin while she kept walking. Back in Dallas, she returned to her office like nothing had happened. Her staff greeted her with cautious optimism. "We've had over 600 media requests," Marlon said, dropping a thick stack of printed emails onto her desk. "Any from people who actually want to talk about policy?" Jasmine asked. He smirked. 3. She laughed. "That sounds about right." Marlon pulled out his phone again. "But there's something you need to see." He showed her a clip. This one wasn't from a network. It was a stitched-together video of high school students reenacting her moment on The View for a history project. One girl even wore a cobalt blazer and sat behind a cardboard desk. Jasmine watched in silence. "They're saying you made speaking truth cool again," Marlon said. She didn't respond right away. Then, quietly, truth was never supposed to be cool. It was supposed to be necessary. Outside her office window, the city moved like always: cars, people, noise. But somewhere out there, conversations were shifting. Young people were watching TV clips not to be entertained, but to see something real. Families were talking about integrity. Activists were using her words as rally slogans. Even her harshest critics couldn't ignore what had happened. Because it wasn't just a viral moment. It was a fracture in the routine. And fractures let light in. What came next would test whether anyone in power was truly ready for that. 3 days later, Jasmine finally spoke. No press tour. No network interviews. No podcast appearances. Just her, seated at a simple desk in her district office, in front of a neutral gray wall, a phone on a tripod, a live stream with no filters, no logos, no title cards. "Y'all have been asking for a response," she said, looking straight into the camera. "So here it is. And I'm only saying this once. Over 300,000 people were watching live within minutes. She didn't rehearse. She didn't read from notes. I didn't go to The View to be dramatic. I went there to talk for real. But if telling the truth in a room that's built on performance looks dramatic, maybe that says more about the room than it does about me. People were flooding the comments section, fire emojis, hearts, exclamation marks, but Jasmine didn't pause. What happened on that stage was real. I wasn't angry. I wasn't loud. I was just done pretending. Pretending that TV equals truth. Pretending that package debate means real accountability. She leaned back slightly in her chair. And if that makes people uncomfortable, they should ask themselves why. It was calm. It was plain. And it was devastating in its clarity. The live stream ended at just under 5 minutes. She logged off, turned off the camera herself, and went back to her day. No spin. No press release. Just honesty delivered quietly but with weight. That was the difference. She didn't need the moment to stretch into fame. She didn't chase attention. She let the moment speak for itself. And because of that, people were still talking about it a week later. Meanwhile, back at The View, the producers had a meeting they couldn't avoid. One of the network's senior execs laid it out bluntly: you can either keep running the same show you've been running for 20 years or you can accept that the world is changing. That meant tougher guests. Less pre-screening. More room for pushback, even when it made the table uncomfortable. Alyssa, to her credit, was open to it. Sunny, more than ready. Joy didn't say much. And Whoopi? She hadn't returned for the week's final episode. Some said she was still upset. Others said she was reconsidering her role altogether. The truth was, no one walked away from that week unchanged. Even the viewers, people who'd never thought much about daytime talk shows, were now questioning why real voices were so rare on mainstream platforms. Teachers were assigning essays on media responsibility. Clergy were quoting Jasmine from the pulpit. Activists were asking, why don't more people speak this directly? Jasmine didn't have an answer for them. But she had a principle: never shrink your truth to fit someone else's comfort. And that stayed with people. Because most of us, at some point, have been told to sit down, to soften the edges, to say it nicer. Jasmine refused. She didn't yell. She didn't curse. She didn't perform. She just told the truth without flinching. And in doing so, she held up a mirror that even TV couldn't cut away from. That's what made it powerful, not the clash, not the ratings, not the virality. The truth. It reminded people that honesty doesn't have to be dramatic to shake the room. It just has to be unfiltered, clear, delivered without fear. In an age where performance often replaces principle, that moment mattered. So if there's a lesson here, it's this: the world may ask you to quiet down, to play the part, to make it easy to digest. But sometimes the loudest thing you can do is speak the truth calmly and not apologize for it. And maybe, just maybe, someone watching will stop waiting for permission and speak theirs too. Jasmine Crockett's appearance on The View wasn't just a moment in daytime TV history. It was a turning point. It exposed the fragility of media respectability, the systemic biases embedded in public discourse, and the growing demand for authenticity in a time when truth is often sacrificed for comfort. Through her calm, unapologetic delivery, Jasmine challenged the norms of televised debate, refusing to conform to the expectations of a medium that often prioritizes image over impact. She didn't come to perform. She came to confront. And in doing so, she disrupted not only the expectations of a daytime audience but also the unspoken rules of how televised debate should be conducted. Her actions sparked a national conversation about media accountability, political representation, and the courage it takes to speak truth in a system designed to control it. And while the fallout was immediate and intense, the real impact was deeper and longer lasting. Jasmine didn't just make a statement, she made a difference. Because truth, when spoken clearly and without fear, has a way of reshaping the world.